All right, well, how you doing, everyone? This is Strat J. Davis here. Today, I got with me Mr. Kip Gross. Kip pitched beginning his major league career with the Reds, and then he went to the Dodgers before he found stardom in Japan, and then returned to play for the Red Sox as well as the Astros, where he would wrap up his career in the majors. How you doing today, Kip?
I'm doing really good, to be honest with you. It's been a good day. The weather here in Arizona is beautiful as can be. Not a cloud in the sky out here that I can see. Donald Trump is in town today, giving a little speech down there, and so it's been a good day.
Hell yeah! So let me get you started, man. I've listened to you talk quite a bit on some other podcasts, and I'm quite impressed with how you came up through, middle of nowhere, Nebraska, to go walk on at the University of Nebraska, and but going deeper into that, how did you discover baseball, and like as you grew into your older age, how did that kind of help shape you, or what role did it play in your life?
You know, I remember playing as a kid because I had two older brothers, and so when I was 7 years old, my dad actually lied because my cousin was 9 in Little League in Gearing, Nebraska, of all places. And so they lied to say I was 9 years old so I could play with them. And that's when I found out at that time. I still remember the team, Boise, who won the whole thing. I pitched 1 inning. My cousin would pitch the next inning. I'd come in and pitch. We'd alternate back from first base to pitching. And it was just one of those things where I always wanted to play at the next level, or at least give it a shot. That's all I ever wanted to do. And so when I was 7, I kind of got to play there for a couple of years in that league. And then I just always wanted to play with those older guys. So I wanted to go that next level. And I just kept doing that throughout my Little League career, all the way through. We didn't have high school baseball at all. So I just had to play Legion ball in the summer, probably 30 games. And it was just one of those things where I always knew I had a good arm. I'll be honest with you. When I was in 5th and 6th grade, we used to have this, all the schools in my hometown of Gearing, we had this day where you'd go out and everybody do sports, do track and field stuff. And one of the events was throwing a softball. And I'll never, ever forget it. My sixth grade year, I threw the ball 196 feet, 11 inches, and I'll never forget that ever, how far I threw that ball. And that the record still stands this day. And I never even warmed up. Back then you just go get the ball and you throw it. You just couldn't cross the line. You got a couple throws to do it. But I'll never forget when I threw the ball, the officials were standing way up close where everybody else was throwing it. And so when I threw it, they didn't have no chance of getting it where I ended up bouncing the ball, because they just went and guessed basically is what they did. But since then, I always knew I had a really strong arm. And so when I got to Legion ball my last year, believe it or not, I've told many, many podcasters the same thing. The only stats I remember from my entire baseball career is my last year at Legion ball. And the reason that is because I didn't know anything about the game. And I just kind of wanted to get to a certain point and had these little bit of goals that I had as far as striking guys out. And I pitched that last year, 74 innings. I struck out 149 hitters in that season. And believe it or not, I gave up a total of 15 hits in 74 innings. And so, I told people, man, I said, I was back in the back where they had, cattle, we played in the fields and stuff. And the players weren't that good. And so those numbers that I had were really, really, I'd love to see it if I was doing somewhere else. But, I know where I was and what I was doing. But at that point, again, I had nobody come to me as a scout and say, hey, we want you to come play here, do this or do that. Had none. I mean, zero. And so what did I do? I decided to go walk on the University of Nebraska, of all places, which was actually kind of a dumb thing to do. And I'll tell you the reason why is because here I am coming out of Gearing, Nebraska, podunk little town, playing Legion ball, not being scouted by anybody. And I walked onto a team that was top 10 in the country at the time, which, looking back at it, I was really dumb on my part. I should have went to a community college or a junior college or somewhere and tried it there. But you know what? I got redshirted and made the team, and it all started then. Working out. it ended up working out. But at that point in time, that's what I kind of understood in my own self, that hey, I got a chance at this game playing professionally, because here I made the team, as a redshirt freshman, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I made the team at this school, and they're top 10 in the country right now, and I'm here. And that's when what happened. It really was a good thing for me, because that year, every week I would pitch in a scrimmage game against the University of Nebraska. And here I am, this freshman coming out of Gary, Nebraska. I'm facing some of the top hitters in the country. I mean, I think they hit like 360 as a team or something like that. It was crazy how good of hitters they were. And so I got to learn to hit against these guys and learn how to pitch a little bit. And then comes that summer, John Sanders calls me up. He was the head coach. And he says, Kip, he says, we got this team down in Tishomingo, Oklahoma. They want to pay for your schooling and go down there and pitch all you can. And then, come back here and we'll do some good stuff. So I said, they're going to pay for my schooling. And they said, yeah. I said, where do I sign this contract? So I immediately signed that deal, went down to junior college, got drafted in the 3rd round of the January draft. And that's when I knew at that point in time, because when I was at junior college, every game that I pitched, there was probably anywhere from 10 to 15 scouts in the stands with their guns. And as soon as I got off the mound, they'd all pack up their shit and they'd get in their cars and leave. I actually started feeling sorry for the players on the teams, because it was like they were there for one reason only. So it was good though. It was good to go down there.
So is that like, how did you end up walking on there though? Because like, I was curious thinking about it. Did you go to school at Nebraska and just go try out for the baseball team, or was there a tryout and that's how you got the scholarship?
No, you know what it was? There's a guy in my hometown, actually the town across from us, the rival. His name was Gary Nybauer. He's actually a pitcher in the big leagues. To this day, I've never met the guy. Don't even know if he's still alive to this day. But he actually called John Sanders. He never watched me play, nothing. I never ever talked to the guy, but he called John Sanders and said, hey, you might want to come take a look at this guy from Gary, Nebraska. And so John Sanders called and says, hey, you want to come walk on? And that's how it was. And so I went down there, I enrolled in school, and I went and walked on. It was the funniest thing, too. I'll never forget the conversation with John Sanders. God rest his soul, he passed away a couple years ago. But he calls me and says, Kip, because he had this little Kip, how he talked, And so he says, hey, we want to come and have you come down and walk on to University of Nebraska. And he says, first of all, Kip, he says, what's your ATC scores? And without me even getting to say it out of my mouth, he said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll take care of that. That was I haven't been on the phone for a minute with the guy. That's just kind of how things worked back then.
Well, no, it's cool to hear an athlete be honest about it, because I don't know. I listen to a lot of athletes talk about their college days, especially, and it's just funny to hear how many of them bullshit about like, oh yeah, we were in the classroom getting the grades and we had the best and whatever. No, they'll help you out if they gotta help you out, get you going. But I don't know much about college baseball, and I know Nebraska has like a football school, and I know most people do. So tell me, like, what teams were y'all playing, and who are some names I might know, and what is the college baseball landscape like?
Well, that was back when the Big Eight was still around. When I played there, it was the Big Eight. You had Oklahoma, you had Kansas, you had Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. And that's when, you had here's my kitty cat here. That's back when we had, like Ferris was with Okie State. Pete Incaviglia was Okie State. Oklahoma, you had Bobby Witt. Now you got Bobby Witt Jr., who's now probably the best player in baseball, if you ask me, as a shortstop. And so there was a ton of talent. There was a lot of talent in the Big Eight at that time, especially in Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, because Oklahoma State, they went to the College World Series quite a bit back then, and
they were a powerhouse back then.
So they were pretty dominant way back then. But what's funny about all that you're asking that is because out of junior college, I had plenty colleges trying to get me to come play for them, and Oklahoma was one of them. And man, if I wasn't from Nebraska, I'd have went to University of Oklahoma. I would have. It was just, they had everything there. They had a pitching coach. That's one thing that most people don't understand about me was I didn't have a pitching coach a bona fide pitching coach until I signed my first professional contract. Ray Tromba was the pitching coach when I went to Nebraska, and we were there probably, I don't know, maybe a month in the fall. And something happened with his family's business in Vegas, Las Vegas, and so he had to quit and had to go tend to his family. And so I literally did not have a pitching coach until I signed my first contract.
And so I know. Well, hold on. I wanted to ask this. I read somewhere. Did y'all win a national championship?
No, the championship that we won was after I got drafted in '86. I went to Alaska. Yeah. I went to Alaska because I always wanted to play in Alaska. The year before, I played out in Cape Cod, and it was hell, man. It was absolutely hell. I can tell you that story if you want to. But so I went.
Yeah, I'm curious because I hear a lot about Cape Cod.
So I went up to Alaska and absolutely loved it, man. It was my kind of place, you know, out in the wild. You had the shit. Bald eagles were like sparrows. I was there, I think, 2 days, and a moose came. I lived with this teacher. Her name was Sharon Woods. Me and Tim Peters lived with her, and this moose comes walking in the backyard, and I'm in the house and I'm watching this moose, and the fence was literally about 5 or 6 feet high, probably 6 foot high, and this moose just walked over that fence, didn't even jump. He just walked over that fence, and I'm like, oh my! I've never seen anything that big in my life. And so Alaska was fun for me because I was a fisherman, I was a hunter fisherman, and all that stuff, and so. Got to play with a bunch of good guys, man. A lot of good guys up there. And what's really funny about it, off that entire team in Alaska, only 3 of us end up playing in the big leagues. Only 3 of us. Usually those teams are just stacked of big leaguers. And we end up winning a national championship. We had like a 780 winning percentage up there. And then we went to the NBC tournament. We won the tournament, won the whole damn thing, national championship. And I signed the next morning with Marty Harvat and the Mets.
Yeah, so before we talk about the Mets, I read you were drafted by the Cardinals the year before, right? You just didn't sign with them. Was that just a money thing, or?
No, you know what? For me, it was just too quick. The whole thing was too quick. I get drafted. Mike Roberts was a scout's name for the Cardinals, and he calls me up and says, "Hey, just want to let you know we drafted in the 3rd round. I'll be getting a hold of you shortly and let you know we're going to offer." And I think it was probably maybe next day or the day after he called, said, "We're going to offer you $5,000. And I didn't know what to do, be honest with you. If I had to do it all over again, partner, I promise you I'd have signed. I would have signed in a second, because there is nothing better than going to get professional guidance and guys that can help you pitching wise, and the coaches and the managers that know baseball. And that's when I promise you I'd have signed at that point. You know, the next year I get signed by the Mets, end up signing for $40-something thousand, which was pretty damn good because they doubled my offer once I went to Alaska. Oh, yeah. But it was one of those things where, you know, you just can't beat the coaching that they have in professional baseball compared to college or high school or anywhere else. You can't find it anywhere. And so I would have signed. But if you want to go back to the Cape Cod thing, I'll let you know all about the Cape Cod thing.
Yeah, before we go on to the pros, let's hear about that, because I don't know anything about Cape Cod, but I see it all the time on YouTube.
So my freshman year, after my freshman year, they wanted me to pitch somewhere, and so I actually stayed in Lincoln. I had no job, and I had to drive to Omaha once a week for a game, just once a week. And it was the All-American League. All it was a bunch of guys older guys that played baseball. That's all it was. And I pitched on a team. And so it went okay. It was okay. It's where I probably should have been at the time. So the next year, I actually get the chance to go play in the prestigious Cape Cod League. And so I go out there. I go for the Hyannis Mets was the team I got to play for. So I get off the plane, and I get picked up at the airport by this guy. He's a lawyer, Mercedes-Benz, and he picks up another player on the team as an outfielder. Can't remember his name at this time. And he's telling us some stories. He says, "Yeah, I've heard some stories about some of these teams in Cape Cod and how they do stuff and blah, blah, blah." He said, "Yeah, there's one family that they don't even let you shower in the house. And they'd make you shower outside." And there was other things he was talking about. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I thought, you know, in Cape Cod, everything be taken care of and boom, boom, whatever, right? So I get to the house. He drops me off at the house, and sure as shit, guess what house I'm at? I'm at the house. They don't let you shower in the house. And they wouldn't let me eat with the family. They had no interest in baseball whatsoever. I can tell you the names, the families, the Robertis. I'll never forget their name, the Robertis.
So why they even let y'all
It
coach
was
there?
it was all about money for them. They told me every week you need to have your rent money on the counter every week. They gave me one shelf in the refrigerator to put my food in the refrigerator, one shelf, and they said, if we're ever having dinner or lunch or something, and we're sitting here, we might invite you to come over and eat with us. It didn't happen one time the entire summer I was there, not one time. Couldn't shower in the house, had to have it there. Man, I tried to avoid even going home. I really did. I'd stay out all night and party, and just so I didn't have to go with these people. Now, here's the kicker of this whole thing. The other roommate that I have was an umpire in the league. And he was an alcoholic. It's the funniest thing. This guy, every day, he'd take a 12-pack of beer, and he'd go to the beach, and he'd drink beer sitting on the beach. Then he'd come back at night, and he'd umpire the games. And so they tried to make it so he would never be behind the plate when I was there, but it was always a controversy when he was doing our games. And the reason he was there and umpiring is because his parents were old enough and they were getting ready to, be deceased, and he was going to collect a bunch of money. That was his whole goal. I mean, just crazy how people are in this world, man. And so the old Cape Cod League, we were horrible. We were terrible. I think off that team, we had myself and one other guy. Greg Briley was the only other guy that made it to the big leagues off that team. And it was here's just a quick little story about the team and how it was. Our coach, I can't remember his name, don't want to remember his name. He was actually a high school basketball coach is what he was. And I'll never forget that. Remember I told you the kid that was sitting next to me when he got picked up at the airport. One game, it was probably a third, maybe halfway through the season. He steals second on his own, comes out of the game or get the innings over. He comes in, and the manager walks up to him and says, "Hey, why'd you steal second base? I didn't give you the sign." He says, "Hey," he goes, "You haven't given me the sign one time. I stole 83 bags this year in college, and you haven't given me the sign once." So that's it. That was our team right there in a nutshell. It was so funny. And so
it's just like a thrown together league for college players.
Oh no, it's one of the top leagues in the country by far, man. The year I was out there, it was the first year for Wood Bats again. It was the 100th year, and it was don't get me wrong, man. There's some great ball players, man. We played some great teams out there. I mean, the teams were loaded. I mean, loaded. But us, we just weren't there. We didn't do good. We didn't do anything at all. When you get out there, you're supposed to have a job. My job was right next door to where I lived. It was a grocery store, and they wanted me to go bag groceries. And I'm thinking, how much can I make bagging groceries? I'm going to be making minimum wage. Oh, no, don't worry about minimum wage. They'll tip you really good over there. So the first day I go over there, the first and last day I go over there, there's this big sign when you walk in the front door of this grocery store was no tipping allowed.
Oh, shit.
I swear, you can't make this shit up, man. And so that day, I went ahead and did it for the whole 4 hours, whatever it was, the whole thing I did. And one lady out of all of them had a quarter. She stuck it in my pocket. I'll never, ever forget it. So I started getting in the newspapers, man. I started looking. I found this was Wendy's ad. And it said $7.50 an hour from Wendy's. And I'm like, oh, my God. I mean, $7.50 to me at that time was wow. So I called the guy. And I explained a little bit to him. He says, "Why don't you come on down here? Let's talk." So I go down and I talk to the guy and tell him the whole situation, what's going on, how I got to do this and I got to pay rent. He says, "Give me a minute." So he goes, gets on the phone. He calls corporate. He comes back in and says, "Hey, I'm just going to let you know we have nothing." He says, "But here's what we're going to do." He goes, "Corporate just allowed me to make up a position. You're going to be a bouncer for us here."
Hell yeah.
He says, "You're not going to bounce." He said, "Every once in a while, yeah, you might have to go throw a bum out from eating on the plates or whatever." But he says, "No, you're going to work in the kitchen. You're going to make burgers. You're going to do all this stuff there." What's funny about the whole thing about the Wendy's thing was I ended up breaking records, breakfast records for making omelets when I was there. And so, by the way, anybody out there listening, by far the best fast food restaurant on the planet is Wendy's. Not a question about it. Everything's fresh. Vegetables, they have timers on everything. The beef is never frozen. It's really, really good. And what they don't use for burgers goes into your chili meat. So promise you, Wendy's is by far the best.
Oh yeah, man. But how long ago was that?
Well, that was 85.
What kind of shit you don't know what kind of shit they throw in those
Oh,
burgers
I
now?
doubt they changed it at all. I really doubt they changed because regulations got even worse on that stuff. So no, the French
Dude,
fries are all made right there, just like In-N-Out Burger, same way. It's really good stuff. So, but yeah, that was my whole in a nutshell. The Cape Cod League, it sucked.
well, while we're talking about like working real quick, a lot of the dudes I've talked to, they played in the 70s, and so they had to have jobs even while they were playing or in the off season. Did you ever have to do anything like that?
No, I didn't. I've always been a worker, man. I've always worked my ass off. And it got to the point when I finally signed that contract. No, I worked every other summer until I signed a contract. But getting $40,000 plus whatever it was, I regulated that money. Well, I bought a truck. First of all, I bought a truck. I think it was like $8,000, a Toyota 4x4. And I think it was like 8 grand. Other than that, I had that money to just hang on and live. And so, shit, my first year of professional baseball, I made $700 a month, and that was only for 5 months. So, and that's before taxes. So it was a stretch. We had to learn how to live, learn how to eat, and
Yeah.
but it was I never had a job in the summer or the winter, I should say. After that, I didn't have one.
When you were coming up in the minors, were there dudes that would blow their money, even if though it was small amounts?
Oh yeah, yeah. I did when
Yeah.
I think you're going to ask me about it later on, but when I was with the Victoria Seals, managing that independently, I couldn't believe what these kids would when we go to the airport and stuff, how they'd spend this money they didn't have. They'd get out their credit cards, go to Starbucks, and get this $15 jalaka waka waka daka whatever, and
Yeah,
and
I know.
and I'm like, dude, you're literally making $500 a month, and I didn't understand it, but yeah, I
I
was
can't
just the opposite of
imagine
that,
that.
just the opposite.
That's yeah. And so yeah, I mean, that's definitely going back to like what you're talking about, not knowing your stats. That and I think, that kind of, I guess, I don't know, best thing I could call it's like a willful ignorance. You're just gonna go out there and ball no matter what. That matched with knowing like how to save your money, knowing the value of a dollar and knowing the value of hard work. I imagine that's a pretty good recipe for success in not just Major League Baseball, but also life. And I
Oh
know you
yeah,
talk about that, like, getting through life. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to fail, but you got to be willing to do that to live a good life.
of course. When I was younger, growing up, I had a dad who was a prick. I still, to this day, he's alive. I still call him a prick, but he was the guy that just wouldn't give us anything. For school every year he'd get us 2 pairs of Levi's, a couple T-shirts, and just a cheap pair of shoes, and that's what we got. Other than that, we had to go work for it. I remember when I was 9 years old, I had to start working mowing lawns and shoveling snow and stuff just if I wanted something extra to wear. And so like I said, I've always been able to work. That's never been an issue for me ever. I overwork. That's my problem. I do too much. But having that in the back of my mind all the time, where I've got to work for what I have all the time, you have a tendency to spend it a little bit less and not blow it on stuff you don't need. And that's why once I got to the big leagues in Japan and stuff, I didn't go out and buy all the toys and stuff everybody's always bought. And that's why I've always been able to do what I've done, because I didn't, I bought one new car for myself, and I bought one new car for my wife who's deceased now, and that was it. Other than that, I did things as far as spending money wise, just enough that we needed. And then, don't get me wrong, we did a lot of really cool things, and we
Yeah.
had a lot of nice house and everything like that. But it just, I just wasn't that guy. I just didn't want to go buy a boat. I didn't want to go buy skidoos and all these different things and motorcycles and waste my time with them. I got over that. So that's kind of how I've always been with that kind of stuff.
Well, I noticed though on your Instagram you have a signed Babe Ruth ball.
Yeah.
Did you buy that?
I bought that back in like 1994ish, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Dude, how'd you get a hold of that? Like, how'd you find out about it?
It was in a sports store, collector store in San Diego at the time. So I got it that time. Yeah.
Damn.
Really cool. Really cool.
Well, anyways, let's go back to the pros. So yeah, I know you were drafted by the Mets, and first I want to know how did you find out you got drafted? That's something I'm always interested in.
Well, you know what? When you're going through the process, Marty Harvat was the scout for me from the Mets. My sophomore, actually junior year of my third year of college, I should say, he was in contact with me quite a bit. He'd call me probably once a week or so, and he'd just talk and say, "How's things going? Is everything going good for you? You know, you live in life, and don't worry about your pitching. You got the stuff. Don't worry about that." And so when the draft came around, uh, I'm laying at my parents' house on the couch, sleeping. Phone rings, and I think my mom said, "Hey, someone's on the telephone for you." So I get up. It was Marty, and he says, "Hey, Kip, congratulations. Just want to let you know you're drafted in the 4th round." And I said, "Thank you, Marty." And that was the conversation. I hung up, went back to sleep. And, I knew the negotiations were going to go on after that because he had to do more work for himself, because they just have to go through a whole draft. So it was just the 4th round on day one. So uh, it was just a short conversation. And then after that, we started talking back and forth about what they were going to offer me. And I told him that I always wanted to go play in Alaska. And so we'll see what goes from here. And so when I went to Alaska, he was still in touch with me all the time. And so when I went actually the NBC tournament, I was hurt. Something in my back got hurt in my shoulder blade. In fact, it was a game on the road. I'll never forget. I pitched 7 innings of no-hit baseball. And they took me out of the game because I said something about the 3rd inning. I told him, I said, something's stiffening up in my back. And I just kept pitching well, didn't give up a hit, didn't give up a run. And so we ended up no-hitting the team and lost the game 1-0. It was, I'll never forget that. And so, they were always there. So I didn't pitch again until the championship game of the NBC tournament. I started the game, and when I was down there warming up on the sidelines, there was probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 Mets officials all down there up in the stands watching me. It was funny. And I'm just like, oh my God, what's going on here? I didn't get an out in the inning. They took me out of the game, but he said, you deserve to pitch this championship game. I didn't get an out. I think I gave up 2 or 3 hits or something like that, or a walk. And they came and got me and said, Kip, and we ended up winning the game anyway. But it was, yeah, it was funny how it all transpired.
So when they brought you out, did you go to like Shea Stadium and check all that out, or was it straight?
No.
Yeah, I know they do that now.
That's reserved usually back then for just your 1st round pick, and today they do all kinds of different stuff. With me, no, it was just, I went to Alaska. He was in contact with me the whole time, and so like I said, after we won the championship that night, I called him and I said, "Hey, I'm ready to sign now." He said, "I know you are." And so my aunt was there, and my 2 cousins were in Wichita. They lived in Wichita at the time. So they picked me up and we went down to the hotel or wherever it was, and got the papers out, got the contract out, and signed it all right there. And it was probably within the week that instructional ball was starting for the Mets. And so I drove down to Florida, and I drove all the way down to Florida. And my first professional experience was instructional ball with all the top players in the organization. And that's when I knew I had a really good shot at getting the big leagues, because I'm not putting anybody else down, but the talent wise, I didn't think was there. If this is the top guys in your organization, I got a chance. I really thought I had a chance. So, and I moved my first year. I got something in my elbow, couldn't figure out what it was. Still led the team in wins and hardly even pitched that season. Second year comes around, I go to they moved to St. Lucie, and that's where Clint Hurdle was the first year manager, and we won the league down there. Another kind of strange story about that year was I was pitching really, really well, man. I mean, everything was just working for me. It made no difference what I was doing. And so I went into Clint twice that year during the season because I was an high A ball, and I was dealing. I was league leader in wins and ERA, I think what it was. I don't know what the hell I all was doing. I never knew my ERA, basically. I just kind of went and tried to win all the time. And so I went into Clint's office, and I said, "Clint, hey," I said, "I'm not coming in here to gloat or anything." I said, "I understand there's probably a pretty good chance that I'm going to be moving up because of how I've been pitching, and this is my second year in A-ball." And I said, "If they want to," I said, "if you could do me a favor and talk them out of it and keep me here, I'd appreciate it." And he said, why? I said, because I want to win a championship, and I think we got a chance to win a championship here. Sure as shit, we won the championship. They kept me there. I went in twice that year to him and told him, asked him about that. And so, yeah, we won the championship. And so, it was you don't win many championships in baseball. You just don't do it. And so that's one of the things I always want to do. I want to win a championship. And here I won a championship in my second year of professional baseball. I ended up winning up several after that, but it was, it's only because I played 16 years. So,
well, real quick about that St. Lucie team, because I believe I saw this on Baseball Reference. That was 1987, correct?
86. I mean, 88. 88 was St. Lucie. That was their inaugural season down there.
So I think it was either 87 or it could have been 88. I forget which team. But did Dwight Gooden come down there for one game?
Yeah, that was the year before in Lynchburg. He was on rehab. He came and pitched then, and I'd actually, it's kind of strange. I got to know Dwight, Doc, after that quite a bit, because I ended up living in Florida for 3 winters, and I got to know him down there. Actually, funny shit is my off season. I shouldn't have said I didn't have an off season job, because I did. When I was in Florida, what I would do is I'd work for myself. I'd polish cars. Kip's polishing service, whatever the hell I call it. I remember what it was. And so I end up polishing his cars. He had 8 cars.
Damn.
And so I go down to his. He kind of owned the whole cul-de-sac, all the houses around the cul-de-sac. And I'd go down there and hang out with him. And I'd get done, and he'd call me in and let's play. What was it, Nintendo back then? And we'd play baseball, and he'd absolutely kill me. I mean, kill me in Nintendo every time. I had no shot. And he'd always take the Red Sox for his team.
Oh, no shit.
He'd always take the Red Sox. What was funny about it, at the beginning, you can always drop a player if you want and add a player. He'd always drop Jody Reed and pick up some other player every time. And he would kick my ass like nobody's business every time.
That's funny, man.
So I got to know him because Greg Pavlik was the bullpen coach for the Mets, and I got to know him in instructional ball really well. We used to go fishing all the time together, and so he's the one that hooked me up with Dwight. He said, "Hey, man, he might need some cars polished," and so sure as shit, I got hooked up with him, and I'd go down there and polish his cars.
Hell yeah, that's cool. And I know you still talk to Clint because he's brought you out to some games in Colorado when he was managing, right?
I just last year at the end of the season, I got a hold of him because they were coming in town here in Arizona. And I said, Clint, hey, my son and I wouldn't mind going to game. I said, if there's any way you could hook us up with a few tickets, that'd be great. And I completely forgot that they have to pay the tax on them. But he just bought the best seats on the planet behind the dugout for us, too. They were really cool. And I didn't even get a chance to talk to him. Believe it or not, I didn't get a chance to talk to him because we got there a little bit late because of traffic. And then I didn't want to bother him once the anthem was over. I just didn't want to go because that's his time now. It's time to concentrate on baseball. Yeah. But I got a hold of him, thank him and everything.
I've heard just a lot of good things about Clint. I've talked to guys that played with him, talked to other guys that played for him as well. And I don't know. To me, it sounds like he kind of would be the perfect manager for young dudes going into A-ball.
He was, being his first year. He managed, he was honest. He was really honest about everything. He would talk in the dugout about this and that and blah, blah, blah. And it was things that you wouldn't think other managers would ever do. I'll give you a good example. There was a pitcher on our team, and one inning, he gave up 3 outs, all to the warning track, 3 in a row, boom, boom, boom. Like, could have been 3 home runs, right? Inning comes over. He says, "Hey, you're out of the game. We're going to bring somebody else in." He goes, "Why are you taking me out of the game? I just got 3 easy outs." He goes, "You just gave up 1,000 feet of outs. We're taking you out of the game." But he said that in front of everybody, and it's like, you know what? It might be time. And so Clint was always like that, though. That was back when he was an alcoholic. He had that was his first wife, if I remember right, and his daughter always in the stands with him every time. And it was just one of those things where back then, alcohol was okay. I mean, I remember every game I pitched in that new stadium, our clubhouse was awesome. I mean, it wasn't a regular A-ball clubhouse. This thing's brand new, state of the art A-ball for the big leaguers spring training. Shit, we had a hot tub in there, and wow. It was awesome. So every game I would pitch, I was a starter, and I pitched there a lot, man. It was fun because I pitched a lot of home games. It just so happened to work that way. And I'd bring a 6-pack of Bud Light every time I pitched, and it'd be sitting in the cooler. And after the game, I'd go sitting in the hot tub, and I'd sit there and just chill out and drink my beers. And it wasn't thought, nothing was even thought of it back then. Now, shit,
Yeah.
you can't do that. Now they all smoke pot. They smoke pot during the games now.
Yeah. I've seen some dudes I think are high while they play.
Yeah.
But going on with your time, so I mean, just for yourself, man, what was it like? What was it like coming up with the Mets, and like, who were some of your favorite teammates? And I know you also don't mind talking about like dudes you didn't like. So who were some dudes you didn't get along with?
You know what?
With the Mets?
I always got along with pretty much everybody. As far as getting along with everybody, I never had a problem with it. To be honest, here's the thing, and this might strike you a little crazy. You've probably heard it before. I don't know, but my only goal every year was to be a good teammate. That's my only goal. My only goal in my whole career was to be a good teammate. And I always figured if I'm a good teammate, people are going to like you. You're going to get along with everybody, and they're going to keep you around a little bit longer if things go bad. And so I was always a good pitcher. I'm not going to lie. I was always pretty damn good, and I was always got along with everybody. The only player in all my 16 years. Probably two guys, and they're both Dominicans, by the way.
Is it Pedro? Is Pedro one of them?
Pedro was a total.
I knew
prick.
he was going to come up. Yeah,
he was a total prick. I mean, when I say that, they're in a player that I played with in the minor leagues or a lot of the big leagues in L.A. that wouldn't say the same thing. Pedro was a prick.
I know Mike Piazza don't like him.
It was all about Pedro all the time. It was always about him and nobody else. And the other guy was Balvino Galvez. And I never meant any harm to him, man. We were on the road somewhere one time. I think it was in Phoenix or wherever. And he had had one of those Dominican shirts on, really colorful or something and I just made a comment to him, man, clubhouse chatter. I said, hey man, you get a bowl of soup with that shirt. That's all I said to him. And he took it completely wrong. He just bought a new Walkman. He threw it up against the wall and shattered it in 1,000 pieces. And I said, man, I'm sorry. It's clubhouse humor is all I said. There's nothing meant by it. And so I did not like Balvino. I didn't. So I did that, and he got pissed off at me. But I had a lot of players on other teams I didn't get along with because I didn't want to get along with them.
Well, yeah, you're not. That's one thing I don't like about the game today is seeing the dudes on different teams be friends with each other. That's not cool.
Yeah, they do it all the time.
Yeah, it's stupid.
But probably one of my best friends to this day now is Jeff Grotwald, and I played against him at all levels. Shit, we got a fight in St. Lucie. He has a picture of it at second base. There's a big pile, and him and I are both at the bottom of the pile. And kind of a cool little story about 10, I don't know how many years ago it was now, probably 12, 13 years ago. I wanted to manage or coach a team that my kids weren't on. It was just a quick little league. It was a high school league after the high school season was over. And it was a draft. And I didn't know any of these kids. I had no clue who they were because my kids were younger. And so I got this high school coach. He was a junior varsity head coach. And I had him come down to the draft with me. And I had another player that you had a guaranteed player on your team if you brought him with you. And there was one guy who was a pitcher outfielder. And so I already had him. And so they went around the whole table to every player is going to be in this league. And they get to this one kid, and they said Hans Grotwald. I'm like, Grotwald, God, I know that name. And collectively they gave him a 2 as a catcher, 2, right? And anywhere from 1 to 5 was the ratings that everybody get. And collectively he got a 2. And then I heard a guy across the table from us. He says, yeah, he says his dad was a big league catcher. And so the draft starts. So the first round, I get this pitcher, and one that I wanted, and or the guy that I was with wanted. Second round came around, and I got a shortstop. I actually knew who the kid was a little bit, and so the guy said, "Yeah, you get that shortstop." Third round comes around. I said, "I want that Hans Grotwald kid," and everybody looks at me like, "What? Hans Grotwald? He's a 2, Kip." He said, "You can get him in like 7 rounds from now." I said, "I don't only want the kid, I want the dad too." By the way, he ended up being the best catcher in the league by far. Wasn't even close. Probably one of the best players in the league. We ended up winning the whole championship and everything, and I got the All-Stars, and he was the All-Star catcher. It was awesome. And to this
Hell
day,
yeah.
Groder and I are pretty much best friends to this day.
No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, then how did you feel? Well, before we talk about you getting traded from the Mets, your AAA manager, Mike Cubbage. Oh, that was him. We're gonna stay on the air, folks.
I'm back.
You're good, brother. You're
That
good.
was 5 seconds.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. But your AAA manager, Mike Cubbage, what was it like getting to play for him? Because I have a question. I have a question regarding him later on. But what was it like getting to play for him in the minor leagues?
Well, you know what?
Because he's a dude, real quick. He's a dude that I think should have had more of a shot to be a manager in the majors.
I also had him. I had him in instructional ball a couple years also, and then I also had him. He was a third base coach for Astros when I finished up with the Astros.
Yeah.
Mike Cubbage. I'll tell you something. Mike Cubbage did for my career, and that's one thing. You know, you don't always have a favorite manager or coach, but you learn from all of them somehow. And I'll never forget. I get called up to AAA from AA. In Jackson, AA shit. It was another thing. It didn't matter where I threw the ball, I got an out. And then I go to AAA, and I'm doing okay. I'm not every game I'm giving up hits, or every inning I'm giving up a hit here, hit there, and it's not the way it was before. And so Mike Cubbage comes over to me and says, "Kip," he goes, "here's the deal." He goes, "You got to learn how to elevate the ball here." He goes, "Everything you throw is down. I understand you're a ground ball pitcher, but you still got to learn to elevate the ball." And that I took credence in, and I listened to him, and that's when I had to learn more about how to pitch upstairs, because usually when I threw the ball upstairs, I didn't get it back. it wouldn't come back to me. You know, the umpire would have to throw me another ball because there's a fan in the outfield bleachers that got themselves a ball. So it was one of those things. But yeah, you learn from everybody. Mike always had a little scowl on his face. He was a good guy, man. He was a good manager. I really enjoyed him again when I got with the Astros because I already knew him. And
did he remember you?
What's that?
Did he remember you when you got to the Astros?
Absolutely. I'd had Mike for shit. I had 2 instruction leagues and then there. And then also when you're in spring training, you're not only just pitching for your team you're going to be with, you pitch for other teams a lot. And so I'd go like have a spot start in AAA or something like that, and that's kind of how it works. You know, you're not my first year after my first year of spring training, or my first year of A ball in '87. I go to spring training in '88. I didn't tell you this story. They demoted me to Columbia in spring training. And everybody's like, "Kip, what's going on? You were the best pitcher in Lynchburg." And I don't have a clue. I have no clue what the hell's going on. They said, "Have you asked?" I said, "I'm not going to ask. There's no reason to ask. They're doing what they have to do. I don't know what it is." So I'm in the outfield in spring training with the Columbia Mets. And Steve Shriver, he always rode in a golf cart. He comes over and picks me up in the outfield. He said, "Hey, Kip, get in." So we take a drive, and he says, "So how do you like spring training?" I said, "Great, man. I'm having a blast down here. It's good getting some baseball in, get some sun in. Everything is great. You know, get some fishing in." He goes, "So how do you like being with Columbia?" I said, "Steve, here's the deal." I said, I understand how this works. I said, "You could put me in rookie ball for all I care. I don't care, because I know after 3 years, you guys got to make a move." And I said, "I'm working on my second year coming up." I said, "I'm going to have one more year after that. You do what you got to do, man. I have not a clue or no reason to doubt what you're doing." So here's the thing. It was close to the end of spring training. So it was like 2 days later, the newspaper comes out, local newspaper for the Mets, St. Lucie Mets. And it says the St. Lucie Mets are going to be led by pitcher Kip Gross. I hadn't spent a day in spring training with him yet. So Clint comes over to me, and because we were having breakfast or something, he comes over and he says, Hey, Kip. He goes, "I guess the cat's out of the bag, man. You're coming and working out with us today now." So that's, it's just what they do. They try to mess with people. They try to get in their brains, see what's going on. I told Steve, I said, "Dude, I don't give a rat's ass what you do. I don't care." I said, 2 years, you're going to have to make a decision one way or another, whether I'm on the big league roster, AAA roster, whatever roster. That's all there is to it. So I said, "I don't care." It was the right answer, I guess.
Yeah. So then how did you feel when you were traded from the Mets to the Reds?
It's funny you asked that question. I didn't know anybody who was even playing for the Reds at that time. I swear I had to get on the internet, whatever, and magazines, and I had to figure out. I said, I don't even know who pitches that team. I had no clue. I swear to God, I didn't. And then I found out Tom Browning, those guys were there, Danny Jackson, all those guys, and it was not Paul Myers, Randy Myers, and myself got traded over there. And so I knew that Dibble was there now, and I knew that I didn't know who these guys were. I had no clue. I really didn't, because they weren't a good team prior to, and so I really didn't pay attention to it. And then next thing you know, we're in spring training with them, and Lou has his big speech for us in spring training, and it was a really cool speech on his part, because he gave a lot of thanks and a lot of praise to Pete Rose for help putting that team together. And so next thing you know, I'm learning who these guys are, and we win a world championship.
Yeah.
I swear I didn't know anybody on the team. I really didn't going in.
Not even the hitters, because I know you said you talk to the hitters more than you do the pitchers.
Well, I didn't I have to face them yet, because I was in Double A and Triple A, so I didn't really know who any of these guys were. I actually had to look it up to see who was on that team at that time. Bunch of great guys, man. Bunch of great guys.
So you played with one of my favorite players. Of course, I didn't get to watch him play live. I've only read about him, but Paul O'Neill, what was he like?
Paulie, he was a character. Him and Sabo hung out a lot together, and you really wouldn't, knowing them separately, you wouldn't put those two down as good friends, but they hung out together all the time. And Paulie, I got to see him at the 25th reunion I went back for a couple years back. And good guy, man, really, really good guy. Straight laced. He was a terrible, terrible snapper, though. When he got mad, he was terrible, terrible snapper. Like at a bat or something, he'd go over and he'd like kind of tip the ball bucket over, just a little bit instead of knocking the balls out, or a bat. He'd kind of just flip. He was a terrible snapper, and so we'd always give him that little recognition about being bad at that kind of stuff. But good guy. I'm sure you remember the kick. He kicked the ball to first base and got the guy out. Whatever, stuff like that just happens over time. And but now he's been the color guy for the Yankees now for God, who knows how many years he's been over there with those guys. So good guy, man, really good guy, a lot of power, disciplined hitter. I was actually I figured sooner or later he'd be with the Yankees. I really did, just because of how he got bigger and bigger and bigger over his career.
And then what about Barry Larkin? Because that was one of my dad's favorite players. My dad was actually a huge Reds fan. And
one of the best.
I don't hear his name brought up enough.
Well, there's probably a reason. Barry Larkin was not a superstar. He never was a superstar. He was just really good, and he was consistent with what he did. Barry Larkin was probably one of the best athletes I ever played with, hands down, no doubt about it. But there was a better player on the same team in Eric Davis. Eric Davis was so much better than Barry. It was crazy. Barry, he took me under his wing when I first got there. He'd take me to we'd go to Atlanta, and he'd take me to this shoe store. I don't remember what it was called. I can't remember. It's huge warehouse shoe store. And they'd pick us up in a van, and we go down there, and next thing you know, he'd walk out with 10 pairs of shoes, and I'd walk out with a pair of cowboy boots. And that's how it was with me back then. But Barry was always good to me, man. He'd always call me Parts, because I always wore jeans and cowboy boots back then. And so Parts is like the Western type thing. He'd always call me Parts. So we got a lot. In fact, I got a bat downstairs signed by him, and all that. It was, good luck, Parts, and whatever. I don't remember what it all says, but yeah, Barry is really good. I was really happy to get to see him at the reunion. He was one of them that I really wanted to see, because he was a little quieter type. He wasn't a lot of talk all the time. He just go get the job done. But man, what an athlete he was. He made shortstop and turn and two look like it was just so easy. So easy. So yeah, Barry's a good dude, man.
And so I take it the Reds was your favorite team you spent time with in the majors?
I wouldn't say that. Lou Piniella is my favorite big league manager. There's no doubt about that. I had so much respect for Lou Piniella. It's crazy. You know, the things he did and the way he did it, outspoken. He had no problem. One thing I loved about Lou Piniella was if you did something wrong in the field or the base paths or hitting whatever or pitching, you come in, he'd tell you right now in front of everybody. He'd get it out now. And you know what? People always said, well, you know, you shouldn't show guys up. Well, no, he's not showing you up. He don't want you going back out the next inning and do the same fucking thing again.
Yeah.
And that's how he was.
Accountability.
And so I loved it because it wasn't just me or another rookie or another guy, 2-year player. He'd do it to the 10-year veterans. So he'd come over, hey, come over here. Hey, we're not going to do that here. And I really respected that out of Lou Piniella.
Well, then, what was your favorite memory as a Red?
Probably getting my first big league hit off David Cone.
That's cool.
Yeah. You know, I had a lot of memories, man. Dale Murphy was my first hitter I ever faced in the big leagues. I went 3-0 against him, and then I threw a fastball down the cock and for strike one. And the next pitch I threw right down the middle again, and he hit it to Barry Larkin to throw to first base for 6-3 out. And that was my first out in the big leagues. But, you know, it was so funny. We're playing the Mets, who, you know, I originally signed with, coming up with, and David Cone's pitching. And this is actually still on the internet to this day. You can go back and look at it. Buddy Harrelson was the manager. And I'm up to bat. I got an 0-2 count on me. And and David Cone's out there shaking. He's shaking. And I'm like, what the hell? I mean, all you got to do is throw a slider or anything to any me, whatever, just get me out. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to hit your shit. And so he's out there shaking. Next thing you know, he throws me a fastball inside. And I always swung the bat, man. I had no problem making contact. If it wasn't a slider, I'd make contact. Oh, yeah. And so I hit one right off my knuckles, man. And it just flared over the first baseman's head for my first hit ever. And the inning gets over. And you can look it up, man. Just look up David Cone, Bud Harrelson fight. They go in the dugout and they get in a fight over me because Harrelson wanted him to throw a pitch out for the guy at first base. And he says, no, I'm not throwing a pitch. We got 2 outs. I would strike this guy out. And sure as hell, I get the hit. So there, check it out. It's on the internet. You'll see it.
No, I for sure will. I like Bud Harrelson, and I've heard a lot about David Cone from.
Yeah, another one. God rest his soul. God, so many guys have passed away. Yeah,
I mean, today we lost Garrett Anderson.
Yeah, I saw him a couple times in Newport Beach the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, it's tough one. 53 years old.
Yeah, it's very tough. Well, then, how did you feel when you got traded to the Dodgers? Because I know you talked about like in Cincinnati because it was a blue collar type place, and then LA was too like glitz and glamour for you. So when you got traded, were you like upset about that?
Nope. And the reason I wasn't upset was because whenever somebody trades for you, somebody likes you, and you know you're going to get a shot to do what you got to do. And so, don't get me wrong, I would probably rather have stayed with Lou in Cincinnati because I was making my waves over there and doing good things. Now, the Dodgers, what have they always been known for? Pitching. You know, always growing up, the Dodgers are always known for good pitching, and half of that reason was because of Dodger Stadium. Because back then, Dodger Stadium was a really tough place to hit in. You know, the 5 o'clock shadow coming down the mound. It's really, really tough to hit in that situation. So, you know, the Dodgers. It was just I got off bad falling out of bed the wrong way, I guess. Lasorda and I didn't get along. We just didn't. We didn't. You know, I'm from Western Nebraska, and he was all about the camera and the film and being on camera and talking and doing his thing. And I just wasn't ever that way. And I let him know about it here and there. And I just didn't want to conform to everything he wanted me to do all the time. You know, I always had a little longer hair in the back, the mullet, and he hated it. He absolutely hated the mullet. And he'd always, because you always have a barber there. You know, I think the barber comes once or twice a week in the big leagues to cut your hair if you want your hair cut. And he'd always say, Kip Gross, go get your hair cut. I'm like, fuck you. I'm not getting my hair cut. And I wouldn't do it. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it just to please you. You know, at that point in time, I'd been playing for a while, and I just couldn't. I don't know. I had other players tell me, Kip, why is he always on you? I said, I don't know. I have no clue why he's on me. You know, I'm doing the job here, do everything he wants me to do, except just a few things here. But, you know, he was the guy, if you're walking down the tunnel, say I'm walking with Tim Wallach, right? and I'm walking down the tunnel, and he's coming the other way, he'd say, hi, Timmy, how you doing? Hi, Timmy, how you doing? Hi, Eli, how you doing? Wouldn't even acknowledge me. And it's just, that's how he was. He was always about the big leaguers and the guys that had time and all that kind of stuff. And I just wasn't that way.
He was just a little crotchety bastard.
Well, he was two-faced. I don't know if I want to say that, but on and off the camera, two completely different people. I mean,
I can see that. I've read stories about the way he treated certain players for whatever reasons, and he just doesn't sound like a guy I'd like anyways. I never really understood the.
There's always things in baseball. People pull pranks and stuff like that. I get that, but one of his big things he would do in spring training, he would always take a rookie in spring training, and he'd be in the bathroom, going to the bathroom, number 2, sit there in the stall, and he'd call a guy in, and he'd say, "Close the door."
What the fuck?
That, I swear to God, he'd do it. That's what kind of shit he would do. And rookie's like, "I got to walk in here. You're taking a dump, and I got to close the door and be in here with you while you're stinking up this place." And I swear he would do that shit. And it's just
weird.
And I couldn't get to that stuff. I couldn't get past that stuff. And so I always thought about that stuff. And then I got the chance to go to Japan. So I always told my agent, if I get a chance to go to Japan, I want to do it because, later in your career, I might not get that chance.
Why did you want to go to Japan though? Like what first got you into that?
It was 2 reasons. One was because I'd always wanted to go there, whether it be late in my career or not. Just so happened that I got the chance to go middle of my career when I was with the Dodgers. And so I told my agent, man, if I get the chance, let's figure it out and go because I want to do this. And so it was basically the prime of my career. I went over there. It was kind of crazy. I did what I did, but I'm actually in Albuquerque. I hadn't been in the big leagues that season, and it was early in the season. And Rick Dempsey was the manager, and it was an off day. And I went down there to pack my shit up and get out of the clubhouse. And Stan Johnson was there as a trainer, who's one of my better friends. Actually, he was in my wedding. And I'm packing up, and Demper comes walking out. He says, "Kip," he goes, "Tommy's on the phone. He wants to talk to you." I said, "What the hell's he want?" He said, "Give me a second." So he goes back in and comes back out, and he says, "Kip, he wants you in the big leagues. He wants you back in the big leagues today." I said, "Demper, tell Tommy to go fuck himself." That was the last words I said to Tommy Lasorda. I didn't want to deal with him anymore. It was nothing but me packing and unpacking my suitcase constantly with him, and I just didn't want to be that guy anymore. So,
had you been on any other team, do you think it would have played out differently? And
100%, not a doubt about it, would have.
You would have continued playing the MLB?
No question about it. Tommy had about a 95% influence on me going to Japan.
Wow.
I just didn't want to be around him anymore, and the way he did things. And be honest with you, the times I was there, Socha ran the club. It wasn't Tommy.
Yeah. I knew you talked about this. So, why do you think they even kept him around? Because he was just a figurehead?
He was a figurehead. I mean, Tommy Lasorda never had more than a 1-year contract his entire career.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, and all that bullshit about him bleeding Dodger blue, it was bullshit. I remember what year it was, the expansion year, and Mike Piazza and Piazza's dad was in town. I don't remember where we were on the road somewhere. And so Piazza's dad and Piazza invite me to go to lunch. It was them 2 and Lasorda. So I'm at lunch with those three guys, right? And they're talking about how Piazza's dad had a chance to get a franchise, a baseball franchise, back when the Rockies and them came out. And the whole thing, the whole damn conversation was, "Tommy, you're going to be my manager." And Tommy's like, "Yeah, of course I want to be your manager." And it was the whole. I mean, it was so, that's just who he is. It just he couldn't tell people, "Oh, I bleed Dodgers." Bullshit. You'd have been gone in a second had he got that franchise.
Well, I knew there had been rumors about him becoming the Marlins' inaugural manager, even.
Well, that's what it was. There was different things out there. So now Tommy would have took off, and it was, I don't know. He's just full of shit all the time. I'll give you one other story about Tommy, and I'll get off him.
Yeah.
It was my second second or third spring training with the Dodgers. And when it gets late in spring training, they start releasing younger guys, out of the minor leagues. And so the one day in spring training, a bunch of us pitchers had to go to one of the minor league fields and do what they call PFPs, pitchers fielding practice. And what they do is they always send over all these young kids that are going to probably get released within the week, but they're just going to use them for a little bit and do their thing and whatever. So I'm over there on the mound. I'm throwing a couple balls to the catcher, whatever. And the catcher comes up firing to second base. This kid had a cannon. I mean, cannon. So I'm looking at this kid, man. I'm doing this over and over, and I'm like, my God. So I go up and talk to him. And he doesn't speak good English at all. Very, very little English. His teeth are rotted out. Oh, my God. It was terrible. And I said, so where did you play this year? And we kind of figured out he was an A-ball, and he hit like a $160 or something like that as a catcher. Wasn't playing hardly at all, blah, blah, blah. And so I knew he was one of them going to get released, right? So I said, dude, you got a cannon, you got this arm, big time arm. So next thing you know, Lasorda comes driving up on his golf cart. I walk over to Lasorda and said, hey, this catcher right here. I said, you need to take a look at him for a pitcher. I said, I know they're probably going to release him here shortly within a week or so. I said, you need to take a look at this kid as a pitcher. Next thing you know, this kid's in big league camp with us. He goes from probably going to get released to he's in big league camp with us now, right? Every year, the Dodgers have to play the series against the Angels, right? And so I was scheduled to pitch in that first or second game, I don't know which one it was, right after the starter came out. They don't call my name. Guess whose name they call? They call the Dominican kid. Ends up being Felix Rodriguez. Played 15 years, pitched 15 years in the big leagues. Felix Rodriguez. They got him a whole new set of choppers, all that shit, man. He looked great. Oh, yeah. And I ended up getting to see him after I retired. He was pitching for San Francisco, and I took a couple of my friends down, and we sat down by the bullpen because Mark Gardner was the bullpen coach at that time for the Giants. He's a good friend of mine. So we sat down there, and next thing you know, Felix gets up and he sees me, and he does one of those things, the kiss of the heart. I remember, man. I remember. Yeah, he'd have been back home picking whatever off the trees back in the Dominican, but he ended up making like $78 million in his career, or something like that.
No credit for that.
But here's the thing. Here, I was going to get to it now. Not once did he mention my name for that. He said, "Oh, I found this kid on the backfield. You're going to release him next week." Blah blah blah. I saw he had a great arm. Yeah, he took total credit for the whole damn thing. Yeah, that's who Tom Lasorda was.
So, when you went to Japan, how did you even prepare for that?
I didn't prepare. I didn't at all. I mean, I was actually really I didn't know where the hell I was doing, actually. I get over there, and I probably sat in my apartment after every game for a month. Didn't even leave. I'd wait for my interpreter to pick me up, take me to the field, and whatever, and then my eventual wife, she came over, and that's when I started going out and exploring a little bit and seeing what was all there. And don't get me wrong, it was Rick Shue and Matt Winters were my teammates, and they were there for a couple of years, so they knew some of the ropes big time, and it finally started gelling with me a little bit. My first year over there wasn't very good. I don't remember what my record was at all, but it wasn't good. But for the most part, it was just I didn't know where the hell I was. I mean, that's a whole different world, man. Going over to Tokyo, Japan, and trying to live there. But then what happened was I met this guy. He was actually from Nebraska. He's from North Platte, Nebraska, and Jerry Vieira is his name, and he was in the military, and he was a baseball fan, so he's one of those guys that can kind of finagle his way to get some tickets and this and that, whatever. And I had no problem giving him tickets, but from there, I ended up meeting another guy in the military, Rick Hubrecht, called him Hubie, and I started getting Japan just wired, man. I mean, I can't even tell you how I had Japan so wired as far as getting food and cars and anything I needed from the military. And my father-in-law, he's retired now, but he's a 2-star general in the Army. And so and things kind of went my way
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of times for different things. So funny. He came over one time for 10 days and I suited him up, put him in the outfield, and it was funny. He couldn't catch anything, couldn't do anything. But what's really crazy about it was we had to go to I wanted to take him up to Yokota Air Base. And normally when I went up there by myself, I'd have to get out my credentials every time and show this and show that, right? To this day, I still don't have any clue how they knew. He's sitting in the passenger seat with me. I get up there, they come out and salute and say, "You're on your way."
Hell yeah.
We'd get out and we'd walk around. Everybody would salute him. And I'm like, how in the hell do they know? He says, I don't know. I have no idea. But they knew. Everywhere we went, man. It was crazy. It's really cool to see, though. It really was cool to see. But yeah, I had a lot of favors with the military over there. A lot of favors.
Well, I mean, that only helps for damn sure. And so I mean, obviously that made it easier for you in Japan. So what made it click for you after your first year? Because I know you said you struggled there, but
It was just learning the game. I just had to learn the game, how they played it. It was
yeah, and they play it differently. I know that. Like you say, they focus on fundamentals, but also it's a different culture around the game. Like, am I right when I say it's a lot more like college football here?
It's their number one sport for one thing. You know, they don't have any. You know, they do have a professional football league, but it's nothing. I mean, nothing. It's terrible. But it's top of their list, and everything. You go into any store, any airport, you're in any cab or anything, they're playing baseball on the radio. Doesn't matter where you're going. It was just different. I mean, you know, you always got the bands playing every inning. Whoever's hitting, their band is playing whatever hitter's song it is, loud as hell. I mean, loud. They all got their clackers going the whole game. It's just a completely different. And then in the game wise, hitting wise, if the first guy got in the inning, they're bunting him over. They're gonna bunt him over. I loved it. I mean, you're gonna give me an automatic out every time the first guy gets on. Shit, I'll take this every day of the week if that's what happens. I mean, don't get me wrong, I didn't want anybody to get on, but at the same time, if you're gonna give me an out, I'll take it. But you know what? Fundamentally, man, oh my God, those guys were solid. I mean, it was fun to play with. I mean, I can't even tell you how good these guys were defensively. It was crazy. You know, I got to play against Ichiro over there, and the one thing about Japanese baseball is, you know, here if you're in second base, you're on second base, you're in scoring position. In Japan, you're not necessarily in scoring position because every outfielder is going to throw a strike to the plate.
Yeah.
You know why they do it? Because they practice it every day. Every day. Ichiro, man, it was crazy. This guy'd come just he'd throw a seed to home plate. You're out. You're not in scoring. And here, like last night, I'm watching the game again. The guy throws the ball 10 foot up the base, and he's probably 50 foot past third base when he's throwing the ball. They don't practice over here anymore. They don't even take infield. Shit, they don't even take batting practice on the field half the time anymore.
No.
It's just crazy what they're doing now, and fundamentals here are shit.
Yeah.
I mean, shit.
Defense has definitely gone to shit too.
It's horrible. I mean, I'll go to a game once in a while with my son here at the Diamondbacks because he asked me to go, and next thing you know, we were there, and he's like, "Dad, I know, stop it," because I'll say, "God, what was that?" You know, I mean, it's terrible fundamentals, and this is the big league level, man. And that was one of the things back when I was playing and before I played. I know for a fact, if you couldn't play defense, they didn't give a shit how good of a hitter you were, unless you were Mike Piazza. They didn't care. They didn't care. You need to come and play defense because we're not gonna give 4 outs an inning here. You're gonna get 3 and it's over with. Now Piazza, horrible catcher, one of the best hitters that ever lived. But hands down, probably the worst catcher to ever pitch or catch in the big leagues.
Yeah, no, he is a terrible catcher, and I was gonna ask you about him, but you talked about him so much on their podcast that I just didn't want to. But I'll ask you this: was it frustrating having him behind the plate?
No, it wasn't frustrating. It was just because you enjoyed his bat in the lineup, but at the same time, you had to kind of manipulate what you're going to throw. You had to be a little quicker to the plate with the runner on because his footwork wasn't good. He should have been a first baseman, man.
Yeah, he
should have been a first baseman. He probably would have won 2 or 3 championships as a first baseman, but as a catcher, he won 0. And that's probably a reason why, is because, you know, you go back and look at all the championship teams, they all had good catchers. Every championship team has a good catcher. Every last one does. And you know, Mike could hit, man. He could just flat out hit.
He's
He was fun to watch. But catching wise, true story. When I was with the Dodgers and he's with the Dodgers, guys were actually hoping that they could pitch on Sundays. They did, hoping their turn was on Sundays because that was his day off on Sundays. So they didn't have
the other catcher then.
You had Carlos Hernandez at that time. Well, Socha was there when I first got there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike took over pretty quickly, and so yeah, had Hernandez was there, who was really good catcher, man. Yeah, Carlito, he was a really good catcher. Yeah.
Well, then I wanted to ask you this about Japan because, you know, first, did you ever learn to speak Japanese?
A little bit. You know, I had 2 interpreters, so in playing in Tokyo, everybody spoke English in Tokyo for the most part. So I didn't have to learn much at all. And, you know, the thing about Japan too is I don't care where you go in Japan, to a restaurant or whatever, there's usually a display before you walk in of every food they had. It's always a little wax of all the foods they have. And then when you go to the menu, every menu you had over there, they have a picture of it. So you didn't really have to, it wasn't hard to order if you went to a restaurant.
So were you able to fit in with your teammates, even with all the barriers and all that?
The Japanese stay away from you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do their thing.
Hung out with Matt Winters and Rick Shue.
Yeah, they go do their gambling every night. They all go to Plinko every night and do their thing or whatever the hell that was called. And they gamble almost every night, man, on the road all the time. Now here's a kind of a crazy one. We're in Cebu. It's my second to last year over there, and it's my 4th season. And I decided, you know, I was commuted. I didn't have to be with the team if I wasn't pitching. They just say go home and do your thing, and then get on a plane or a bullet train and come meet us on your next start. And so that one night in Cebu, I decided to stay the night at the hotel. So I'm down in the bar having a beer, and our shortstop comes and sits down next to me. It was really strange. It never happened. That just didn't happen. And he was Yukio Tanaka was his name. Yukio Tanaka. And good hitter, good shortstop, all that. All-star, the whole gig, right? He sits down next to me. Next thing you know, him and me are rapping English for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Talking nothing but English. I mean, straight up. Yeah, he had an accent. No doubt he had an accent, but straight up, he was perfect. So the next day, it was awesome, man. It was awesome. I mean, I'm like, yeah, I heard, you know, they start learning English in 3rd grade over there.
Yeah.
And so they all know how to speak English. They all know how to understand speaking English. And so the next day I went to my head interpreter, Toshi Shimada. I said, Toshi, hey, man, I got to tell you, I said, Yukio last night, he sits down at the bar with me. We're having some beers. And, dude, we rapped English for like 2 hours. He says, no, you didn't. I said, the hell I didn't. We sat there the whole night and talked, man. It was a great conversation about all kinds of stuff, man, all kinds of life and whatever. He was perfect. It was awesome. He goes, that didn't happen. I said, all right, whatever you say, man. Yukio Tanaka never said another word of English to me the rest of the time I was over there. Not one.
What the hell?
They don't want anybody to know they speak English.
It's a total cultural thing, huh?
Yeah, so that's when you see like your Japanese players over here, you know, like the guy from you know, these guys, they all speak English, but they all have their interpreters there because they don't want to mess it up. They want to be perfect. Like the pitchers, they'll throw bullpens for 6 days until they feel like they're ready to pitch again. I mean, they'll have eight days between starts over there because they want to make sure they're ready to go.
Wow.
They don't want to screw it up.
That's wild. I didn't know that part. That is crazy to me. So
that's how they are.
I wanted to ask you because I read this and I hadn't heard you talk about this, but you had a fan attack you when you were in Japan?
Yeah, had more than one. It was more than one. It was.
Wait, is that because you're an American?
Yeah. Well, I think there was more to it than that. Another player on the other team, I knew him, and actually he was a Met. He came with the Mets too, and we decided we're going to go to a sushi bar. It was after the day game, and so we went to a sushi bar. We come out of the sushi bar. That day, by the way, that day I just pitched my third straight shutout, and nobody over there had ever thrown 4 in a row. Never happened. And so we come out of there and we get jumped by about 6 or 7 Japanese guys, and they just beat up on us. I remember that the one guy, he kicked me in the ribs, and he broke 2 of my ribs. And I still pitch, man. I don't get me wrong. I was loaded every time I pitched, but I got on that mound and I pitched. But it was tough, man. It was tough.
Well, is that part of the reason why you decided to leave and go back to Major League?
That wasn't it at all. The reason I left was kind of twofold. One was because the Fighters decided not to pick up my contract.
Yeah,
the next year. But another team out there had already offered me a 2-year deal, and the Marines did. They offered me a 2-year deal, and at that same time, what's that?
Chibolote?
Yeah, Chibolote Marines. They offered me a 2-year deal, and which was right down the street from where I was living before. It wasn't that far. I just had to cross the bridge. And so at that time, now she was my wife, had never experienced the big leagues. And so my agent called and said, "Hey, Boston's offering you a 2-year deal." And I said, "You know what? Let's go. What the hell? Let's go back so you can experience the big leagues for a little bit." And so we went back, and that's what it was. And I hated Boston. Absolutely worst thing I ever did. Worst thing I ever did in baseball was sign with Boston.
So yeah, because I read that Dan Duquette, he said he wanted you since you had left for Japan. And you came over there, but yeah, I knew you said you hated it. So what happened, man?
He was a liar. He was a complete liar. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. I actually think he's bipolar. I signed a 2-year deal over there, and I make the team out of spring training because I had a hell of a spring. And it was probably, I don't know how many games in it was. I remember we were playing Tampa Bay at home, and it's in the 9th inning. They bring me in. And the second out that I got, it was a line drive that hit my pinky right on the end of my pinky and broke my pinky in 2 places. I didn't know at the time that's what it was, but I finished the game. But at that point in my career, my best pitch now was my changeup, and it was a circle change that I had to use my pinky with. And so I'm icing every day. I'm doing everything I can, try to get this thing right. And I had enough painkillers to get me through for about another, I don't know how long it was. So I'd take some painkillers before beginning of the game. So if I had to get in the game, I'd be okay. And finally, man, they take me in. Duquette takes me in Jimmy Williams' office. And they have to tell you this because I had enough time. And they said, "Hey, by rule, we have to bring you in and let you know that we're thinking about sending you down." I said, "You know what?" I said, "I have no problem with you guys thinking this because I stink right now." But I said, "You know what? It hasn't been very easy pitching with a broken finger." And Dan Duquette actually says, "I didn't know you had a broken finger." Jimmy Williams, I swear to God, he's sitting at his desk and he goes like this. He's like, "I can't believe you just said that to one of your players. You didn't know he had a broken finger." Yeah. And so they actually send me down the next day, and they put me on the 15-day DL. And so I'm down in Pawtucket. And so the Red Sox, the big league team, has to play. They always, how they always play the minor league team once every year. Yeah. Well, they came down, and so I was in the dugout with the big league team. And so I walk up to Jimmy during the game, and I said, "Jimmy, I got to tell you, man, I can't do this anymore." I said, "My finger's killing me. I can't do," because I actually pitched a couple games down there for him, and I wouldn't even throw my circle change. I was throwing something else. I just can't do it. I can't do this anymore. And he looks at me, and I knew the expression right then and there that they were going to take me off the DL. I knew what was going to happen. And sure as hell, the next day they take me off the 15-day DL, and that's when I got pissed off, and I took off. I left. I went to see some specialists to look at my finger, and every last one of them said the same thing. "No, you can't pitch." Two parts of my pinky were broke. There was 2 bones broke in there. And so it was, you look at my numbers with Boston, they were horrible. Before the pinky was broke, I think I gave up 1 run.
You were only there for 11 games, right?
Right. But I'm saying I think it was only 3 games were my last 3 games. They were terrible.
Yeah.
We went to Oakland. That's where I gave up the grand slam in the first inning. And then I think 2 days later, I gave up another home run to the same hitter. And then we went to Toronto, and they brought me in to close a game, and I gave up a home run there to lose the game there too. And so it all magnified. They wouldn't give me anything for my finger anymore to pitch. I had my own painkillers prior to that, and after that I had nothing. And so I was just begging, man. I'm like, God, I can't do this. And
So was Boston when you started to realize, like, okay, this is coming to an end?
Yeah, the whole thing was just screwed up because, I mean, you got a pitcher with a broken finger, and that's the main finger he uses to throw the baseball.
Yeah.
And they didn't even recognize that I had a broken finger. They suspended me without pay because I wouldn't throw a bullpen. I had a cast on my hand. I walk in the clubhouse. Pitching coach in AAA says, Rich Bombard, I'll never forget the prick. He comes up to me and he says, "Hey, we're going to throw a bullpen." I said, "Rich, I got a damn cast in my hand. I can't throw a bullpen." So he says, "That's your final answer?" I said, "Yeah." He walks back in the coach's room, comes back out and says, "You're suspended without pay until you want to go throw another bullpen."
So what the hell?
That's the whole truth, nothing but the truth, man. So
they just released you?
No, they didn't release me. They suspended me without pay till I could pitch again. So I had to wait until the splint and everything came off my hand until I could go throw again. And then I came back. And how about this one? While I'm suspended, a buddy of mine back in my hometown passed away, and they wanted me to be a pallbearer in his funeral. They refused for me to leave, even though I was suspended without pay. They wouldn't let me go back to go to the funeral.
So they were just shitty all around, everyone.
All around. And it was all Duquette. The whole thing was Duquette. Jimmy Williams had nothing to do with it. He knew. He knew some things in the back, and it was terrible what Duquette was doing. And on the flip side of it, how about this? So Jeff Fry, you know that name?
Yeah, hell yeah.
He was hurt and he was working out in Pawtucket. He wasn't hurt anymore. He was good to go for weeks, and they wouldn't bring him back up. That's how Dan Duquette did things because they had somebody there already. They didn't need him.
And that's just how they treat. That's how they treat people. That's how they treat dudes going for work and trying to make it.
You know what the craziest thing about this whole thing is with that too was before I signed with them, I had so many guys that played that said, "Kip, don't go to Boston, man. Don't go to Boston. They don't do things right over there." I'm like, it's the big leagues, man. How can they not do things right in the big leagues?
Yeah.
Sure shit. That's what they were doing.
Did you have any other offers when you were coming back from Japan?
No, I just went to that one. It was just the Boston. I had a 2-year deal, and I refused my second year of the deal.
Yeah, you just signed with Houston, right?
Yep, I signed a minor league deal with Houston and turned down the $750,000 with Boston.
And so, what made you join Houston? Like, well, I guess first, did you have options from other people too, or was Houston just where?
Yeah, I had other calls. Yeah, but Houston, the GM at that time was used to be with the Mets, and so I knew him coming up with the Mets way back when. So Hunziker, and so it was him and we talked on the phone. I told him the whole situation that happened in Boston. I didn't add to it, didn't distract from it. I just told him the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And next thing you know, he says, "Come to spring training, and we'll see what happens." So and it was fun, man. I had so much fun there.
Yeah, so I was going to ask because I actually just read Larry Dierker's book recently.
Right.
And he was your manager. But so you started out spring training there. What was that like, spring training with the Astros in 2000?
It was really cool, man. First of all, Doc was there. Dwight Gooden was there, so I already knew him. He was my throwing partner. And, that's when I got to meet Biggio and Bagwell and all those guys. And they were just good guys, man. They didn't big league anybody. It was really cool to see how they handled everybody around them, and they were just good, nice, good people, everybody. And I could see how somebody could thrive with the Houston Astros. I could see it because that's just the organization, how they were. There wasn't one personality in that clubhouse that was like that with the younger guys or anything like that. It was just so cool how everybody was in that clubhouse. And after being there for a little while, I'm like, man, I kind of wish I'd have started my career here. Because
Really?
this is really really cool how they handle everybody here. Yeah, I mean the owner, I can't remember what his name is now. When I was there, but he'd come in the clubhouse after the game, walk up to you, shake your hand, how you doing? You know, is everything going good with you and all that stuff? And just the whole whole organization was that way. It was really cool. And then it was the first year of the dome down there too, that when they enclosed it down there for Houston.
Minute Maid, right?
I don't even know what it's called anymore, but yeah, it was the first year of opening that up. I can't even believe that's been 26 years since that place was opened. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's funny to me too, because I can remember being a little kid and my parents saying like, "This is the new stadium," and now it's not. It's not new anymore. But
No.
so you went to New Orleans first for AAA, and they don't have that team anymore. But what was that like? What was professional baseball like in New Orleans?
Hot.
Yeah.
God, it was hot. My wife was pregnant. She was due almost any time. It was just, oh my God. We'd come home. We had an apartment on the second floor, and we'd come home after the games, you know, sometimes be midnight, whatever time. And it was just still stinky. I mean, sweaty hot at midnight, and just walking those stairs up the flight of stairs to get to the apartment. Oh my God. You're just wet by the time you got up there. And so it was just, you know, they actually, after the season was over with them, they called me and said, "Hey, we'd like to re-sign you and all that, and come back. You're just a great presence at the clubhouse to all the younger guys." And I told him right up, I said, "Gary, I said, man, if you guys move out of New Orleans, I'll do it. But I can't go back to New Orleans for another season. I can't do it. It was just too damn hot. It was way, way too hot."
One thing that struck me was I looked at that AAA team from that year, and dude, like damn near everyone made it to the majors or had played with the majors off that team. And then your manager was Tony Pena, right?
Yeah, Tony was great.
So was that like a pretty explosive AAA team, or was it just kind of a mismatch of
It was just it's AAA, you know. You don't really know what's going to happen. You know, we had Lance Berkman on the team. I mean, it was just a really good club. I don't even remember if we won or lost, to be honest with you. It was just one of those teams where you just kind of tried to survive. But yeah, Tony Pena was awesome. I really loved him as a manager. You know, I'll give you one quick story about Tony. I come in the clubhouse when I was always one of the first guys there every night, every day. I was always one of the first guys in the clubhouse, always was. And one day I walk in and he sees me. He says, "Kip," he goes, "Hey, how you doing, man?" I said, "Doing good, Tony. How you doing?" Good. He said, what do you got going today?" I said, "I got to throw a bullpen today." And he goes, "Let's go. Let's fucking go right now." He grabbed his catcher's mitt and we went down and he wanted to catch my bullpen instead of waiting. That's just how he was and who he is. And he was fun, man. He was a good manager. He told me like 2 weeks in advance I was going to pitch. I was getting called up. He said they got a little thing going on. You're going to be called up and da 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 da. I mean, that never happens. It's usually the night before they tell you. With me, I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks in advance. They told me, let me know.
Wow.
I was supposed to pitch in Milwaukee.
So, yeah, and you did, right? That's who you. And that wasn't your last game, correct? Or was it?
No, my last game in the big leagues was in Colorado.
Okay, that's correct. Yeah, and well, so those 2 games, man. Did you have any inkling that like that was it? That you know those might be your last 2 games?
Well, here's the story. So I'm still in the big league club, but I'm not pitching. They're not calling my name, nothing. So I went into Gary to Hunziker, the GM, because I knew him, and I said, "Hey," I said, "You probably never heard this before from anybody, but I want to pitch." I said, "If you got to send me back to AAA, send me to AAA. I just want to, because I'm about the end of my career, man. I want to pitch." And so he still waited probably another week or so before he sent me down. But yeah, I went in and asked him to send me down. It's just one of those things. You want to pitch. I knew I was ending my career. And then the next year with Colorado, I was in AAA the whole time. So it was fun. Colorado was fun. I had a blast. Basically, be honest with you, basically the last 2 years of my career, I signed so I could play golf on the road.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hell yeah. I mean, that's pretty good enough reason to do it.
Yeah, so that's why I signed back. But I just wasn't. I still, after Colorado, I still had teams calling saying they wanted to sign me, and I'm like, are you guys watching what I'm seeing? Because I said, I'm just not good anymore, man. I'm just not good. Yeah, but you're really good with the kids, and you're good talking to the pitchers. And I said, so why don't you sign me as a pitching coach or something then? Yeah, we like you in the clubhouse. So that's how it kind of was with me. It was good stuff, though.
Well, then I know you've talked a lot about like coaching in high school, but you haven't talked too much about coaching in the Golden Coast League. So, what was the Golden Coast League? Because does that even exist anymore?
The Golden League, I don't think it does anymore. It was okay. What happened was Brett Boone signs to go be the manager of Victoria, the British Columbia for the Seals, Victoria Seals. And I'd known Booney for a long time, and we'd done a bunch of different trips and stuff. And he calls me and says, "Hey, I want you to be my pitching coach in Victoria." And I'm like, "Well, so what's all involved?" He says, "Well, we got to get some players first. We're basically the GM. We're basically the coaches. We got to do it all." So I was making call after call, trying to get kids signed and play up there. And so we get up to Victoria, and we go through a 10-day spring training where we got to make some cuts and what have you, which was pretty hard to do for the first time ever, having to cut kids, whatever. But 5 games into the season, the owner of the team comes to me and says, "Hey, I got 2 pieces of paper. Ask Boone which one he wants." One was he's going to resign, or one he's fired. And so Booney was drinking. He was back on the wagon doing his thing again, and it was ugly. It was really, really ugly. Actually, I went into him the night before and told him, said, "Dude, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't take care of you like this every day. Every fucking day I'm taking care of him and making excuses and everything for you." So he took the resignation paper and told everybody they had family issues back home, whatever. And so I took over the club after 5 games. So I still had 85 games to coach him. And it was basically my team anyway. I did everything. I signed him, I coached him, I'd done everything. And Booney was basically just a figurehead out there. And don't get me wrong, Booney's a good dude, man. We've done a lot of things together, but it wasn't a good fit at that time for him to be there, what he was doing. And so I took over the club, and right away I had to find somebody to help, because I was it. I was the only guy there. Because with Boone, I was the pitching coach, and he was going to be the hitting coach and the manager. And so now I'm the manager, basically the pitching coach, and now I got to basically try to find a hitting coach. I knew how to hit, but it was one of those things. I found this guy out of Orange County, and he was terrible. I mean, terrible. He was lazy as lazy gets. He didn't want to throw batting practice. He'd show up late. Wouldn't help me with the luggage or the equipment. Every time we went somewhere, I was pretty much I did everything. I was the GM, I was the manager, I was the pitching coach, I was the hitting coach. I was a traveling secretary. I did it. I did it all, man. I swear to God, I did it all. And there's, now you got to deal with a lot more problems than what you normally deal with. And, there was, I remember the one time we had one kid, he hurt his rib cage, and he had a hard time swinging the bat. So we put him on the shelf for a while. Most guys, they did release him. And so the reason I put him on the shelf was twofold. One was because I thought he was still a good hitter, and I thought he'd come back pretty quickly. And the other one, we were going to Hawaii for a week for a trip over there in Maui. And so we get on the bus and all that to get on the airplane to go to Hawaii, and everybody gets meal money but that kid. The owner didn't want to give him meal money because they didn't know what day he was going to get released if he gets released. And I'm just like, this is bad. And so next thing, we're in the mall. The kids are all in the mall, all the players in the mall, and I'm walking through, and I hear them back there talking about why didn't he get any meal money? And so I heard him. So I walked back there, took my wallet out of my pocket, and I paid him right there with my own money, the whole thing. And I never got that back. Shit, I can't even tell you how much I got screwed at the end of the season with that team. It was one of the games they had. You remember those old projected TVs? They were like 40, 50 inches, and they were like 4 foot wide, and They were projections from inside. They were terrible, terrible TVs.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, they had one in the clubhouse for the kids. And after one of the games, we'd been
in 2010.
Yeah, we'd lost like 8 games in a row or something like that. And I hear them over in the clubhouse over there cheering. They got the music going, blah, blah, blah. So I picked up one of the fungos in my room, and I went in there. I threw that bat right through that TV. And probably the thing was worth probably $50. I mean, it's one of those, you know what I'm talking about, the projection TVs. They were terrible TVs. Anyway, after the season's over, I don't get my last check. So I called the owner. I said, "Dude, what's going on? Why am I getting my check?" He goes, "We used that check to buy a new TV for you that you blew up in the clubhouse." I said, "That TV's worth like $50." He says, "Well, you never did replace it. See, that's your check." It was I think it was a $4,000 check.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I did. When we were in Edmonton one time, he asked me to go get space heaters at Home Depot because it was so cold out. So I went rented like 3 space heaters, paid for all that. Can't even tell you the stuff I paid for it. He never paid me for it ever.
Who was this man? Like, was
his dad used to be the owner for Edmonton up there. Darren, what the hell's his last name? He was a cokehead. We found out all kinds of stuff about him later on.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So I did my thing up there. The players respect me. I'm still friends with a bunch of them, and no big deal. I got over it. But we were good. We were a really, really good team. It's just I put together a hell of a team. But the problem was there was a team in the league, Tijuana, and they weren't good at all. And we were scheduled to play them like 15 times in the second half. And first of all, they shit-canned us going to Mexico because there was all kinds of stuff going on down there. So they didn't want us to go down there. And then they decided to change the schedule up and give all the Tijuana games that were ours to Orange County. And so right away, we knew who was going to win the league. Orange County is going to win the league. And so Orange County ended up going to the championship in Maui again. But we definitely had the better team.
Wow.
That's independent ball.
I've never heard anyone talk about independent ball. I know about it.
Yeah, they changed the schedule, completely changed the schedule the second half because of finances.
And like, okay, so just to give me an idea, like how many fans would show up to these games?
We got shit. I think we were at 2,000, something like that. We had the second most in the league. I think it was. We did really, really well. We played on a soccer field, for God's sakes.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was we were always, it looked like double A in for the fans in the stands is what it looked like. It was never the only one game where the whole soccer field was packed is when that Princess of Baseball, the knuckleball pitcher, faced us one time, and it was packed. And she was terrible. I mean, terrible. That was a shit show. That was a complete shit show.
So they would do slideshow stuff like that.
Well, that's independent baseball. That's what they do, little things like that just to try to get fans in the stands. And they actually had to sign a contract when she pitched that she would have to pitch at least 3 innings of the game. That's independent baseball. That's what you do. You never know what's happening. And it's really funny. The Darren's dad that was actually he was the owner. He's the one that lent Darren the money to have the independent team. But after the game was over, that with the knuckleball princess gal, she was Japanese, and he comes sitting in my office with me, and he sits down. He says, "Kip," he goes, "So what'd you think of that out there?" I said, "It was a fucking shit show. That's what it was." And he goes, "I agree with you." It wasn't 30 seconds later, Darren, the one who screwed me out of the money, comes in because it was a packed house. He comes in, "Oh my God, what a great deal that was today. What a great game." And we're both looking at him like, see, that's all that he cared about was the bottom line. He didn't care about the play on the field or anything like that. I mean, I think she hit like 5 guys with it, hit them, and it was just bad baseball. It was terrible baseball. And independent teams can play, man. There's good players. It was.
Well, I know like the Billings Mustangs are an independent team now, and they have a hell of a history. Well, shit. I mean, were they still the single A team when you were on the Reds, Billings?
I think they were, yeah.
Yeah, and well, now they're an independent team because of the stupid crap MLB did to the minors, and
it took all the teams away.
Yeah, and I don't get the point of that Because honestly, I think that was the players screwing themselves in the long run.
Well, they're just trying to save money is all they're doing. I mean, the draft's only 20 rounds now, and so everybody after that is an or a free agent for $20,000. So it's ways to save money is what they're
Do you
doing.
think baseball is going to go on strike next year?
No, it's going to be a lockout. It won't be a strike. It'll be a lockout. Yeah, it'll be a lockout. Of course it will.
How do you think it will be for the full year? Like, do you think the World Series will be canceled again?
I can't tell you. I just know it's what's going on right now is not good. It's so far apart. It's ridiculous. And the craziest thing is the owners just keep spending the money. So it doesn't make sense. You know, I mean, here you got Ohtani just signed for $700 million for 10 years. They just signed that other kid for they signed him for $300,000 for 6 years, or no, 5 years. I mean, it doesn't make sense what's going on. I mean, the Dodgers, if I had the money and I had a conglomerate like they have, all those different owners pitching in money to pay these players, why not? I get it. But the problem is that commissioners should be stepping in and saying, hey, you can't do this. You can't do this. I mean, this is right. Here's what I've been saying for years. And I've been saying this for probably 10 years, at least 10 years, maybe even more, probably more than 10 years. Right now, I can tell you 3 or 4 teams right now, they're going to be in the playoffs in 3 years. That's wrong. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Shouldn't happen. That's why football's so cool.
Yeah.
You know, football's so cool because everybody's got a cap and it's you better quarterbacks, you understand they're probably going to be, but that's even dropping off now in the NFL. So it's just, you don't know. You don't have a clue from the beginning of the season.
Well, for the longest time when I was growing up, baseball was like that. Like, the only team you could really count on making it to the playoffs was the Yankees. But hell, the Yankees they've only won World Series in my lifetime. 2009.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They've dropped off a bunch. There was a time there when those guys, Jeter was there.
Yeah, they won.
It was ridiculous. Well, yeah, they spent all the money. They spent all the money, and they had a lineup you could pick out of a hat every day. But that's to me, it's just wrong. You shouldn't. Every team should have a chance at the start of the season to win, or at least get to the playoffs every year. You know, it should be that way, and it's not. I mean, I'm so happy to see Oakland Athletics right now, or whatever you want to call them, Sacramento Athletics right now, where they're at and what they're doing, because they're doing what they need to do. I told in my own podcast, I've said for 2 years now, you wait till they get to Vegas. They're going to have a team that's going to be ready to go, and that's when they're going to have a ton of money. They're going to spend and spend and spend, and they're going to have something legit in Vegas. And now it's this year. They're in first place right now, aren't they?
You know what? I don't know what's happening tonight with the games. I haven't seen yet, but I know last night they were tied for first place with the Rangers.
Right.
Because the Rangers split that series. I'm a Rangers fan, so I watched that whole series. But
right.
So are you in favor of a salary cap?
100%. I've been in favor of salary cap when I was playing. When they would come in the clubhouse in spring training, they talk about not having salary caps. I so much wanted to speak up and say, why not? Why not? Well, because Alex Rodriguez should be paid more than everybody. Okay, pay him more than everybody, but they should still have a salary cap. Figure it out. They do it in football. Why can't you do it in baseball? And so every team now has to spend at least so much money. And I mean, just right now, I mean, here's a stat you might not know. Day one of the Dodgers this year, they had $2.2 billion on the books for salaries. You heard that right. You heard that right. $2.2 billion on the books opening day for players.
That doesn't sound right for baseball, especially whenever less than 50 years ago, they had probably less than 10 million on the books.
That's what I'm saying. It's absolutely crazy what's going on right now, and teams can't compete with that. You just can't compete with that, and it's just to me, it's just not right. And how the A's are in first place. They're tied for first with the Rangers, 10-9. But it's just, you gotta make this shit fair and equitable for all the teams, and they're just not doing that. It's I mean, there's so many teams. I can go through them right now. I mean, they don't have a chance from opening day. The Royals, Chicago White Sox. I mean, it's over and over. You got to make this right for teams, you know, and it's not happening.
You got to make it right for the fans too. Because one thing I have to say is, as a working man, it's also pretty frustrating that, like, I work my ass off. My wife works her ass off. You know, we save our money, we pay our bills, pay our taxes. Do we do what's right? We can barely afford to go to a damn game.
But you can't go to the game. You can't afford it. There's very few people can afford it. I turn on the TV every day. I'm like, how in the hell do these people afford? I mean, opening day for the Dodgers this year, what was it? I think that the smallest ticket was like $400 or $500.
That's
for
bullshit.
Opening day. And it's just it doesn't make sense. You're eliminating so many. And they're saying, well, it's opening day and they just won the world championship. Okay, so why is it $400 for the cheapest ticket?
Well, I'll tell you what it is, Kip, because I'm someone that's just of that generation right now. It's also the MLB wants it to be like this, where they don't want working class people going to these games. They don't want regular Joes going to these games. They want people who have a social media following and go take little selfies in the stands or whatever. And, I went to a minor league game the other day, and they're doing this at a minor league stadium. So why wouldn't they do it in the MLB? I do believe that's part of it, because it's all about the image, and they're trying to sell that image now. It's no longer just about the game. It's no longer just about what baseball is supposed to be. That's why they have all these stupid rules, like making the bases bigger, the pitch clock, stupid shit like that.
Yeah, well, they blame that on the commissioner who came in. He's the one that done all that stuff, and I just can't get on board with it. So
no.
Yeah, I've been watching more baseball this year and last year than I had in the past, but it's only because my son, he really wants to watch it and do all this stuff. So I have been going to some games with him, and I got the game on right now.
Yeah, I was fixing to turn on the Rangers game here in a minute, but I'm going to ask you one more big question before we go, and then I'll let you plug your stuff, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more. But my big question I just always ask every single guest that comes on here is, what was your little boy moment in professional baseball? And what I mean by that is, like, for example, Billy Sample came on my show, and he said, like, the moment that made him feel like a little boy was, Brooks Robinson came up to him, and that's a guy he grew up watching, and told him he was a good player. And Billy Sample said something to him about, he didn't really believe him, but then the next day, Brooks Robinson came up to him with a stack of his own cards, and just to show him, like, hey, dude, like, nah, you're a real major leaguer just like me. And so what was a moment like that for you, that just, whether it was a person you met or a moment you were in, that made you feel like a little boy?
You know what? It was probably, by the way, I knew Brooks Robinson. I actually, one of my old best friends way back when, his dad was on his high school team. Every guy on that team played professional baseball, by the way. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, my second year with the Reds, spring training, we got to go to Baseball City. And my hero growing up, I mean, since I was a little kid, was George Brett. I mean, I used to, every game I'd find a radio, man, or if it was on TV somewhere, I'd find a way to watch it. But every game I listened to it on the radio. And God, that was way back when. And anyway, we go to Plant City. I mean, we go to Baseball City, and we're going to play the Royals. And I'm scheduled to pitch second up in that game. And it's later in spring training, so most of the hitters now are at least getting 3 at-bats in, right? And so I'm warming up. I'm ready to go in the next game. I'm watching who's coming up, and sure as hell, George Brett is due up first in the inning that I'm going to pitch. And I'm just like, whoa, this is going to be awesome, man. People have no clue how much I was of an idol that George Brett was to me. I actually, when I was in high school, one of my English classes, you had to get a hold of somebody that you wanted to be in the profession of. And you had to write a letter to them. And so I told my teacher, I said, because she said, well, I'll find the the address and everything for you guys. So I went up and I said, I need somehow to get a hold of George Brett. He's with the Royals. And she goes, you're being unrealistic. I said, you asked about a profession I want to be in. That's my profession I want to be in. And she goes, you're going to have to come up with something else. I said, I'm not going to. You asked about a profession. So I never did do the whole thing. I just kind of bailed out of it. Anyway, so I get warmed up. I go down the dugout. I'm just like a little kid, man. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go in there. I got to pitch to George Brett. This is going to be so cool, man. So I'm sitting there, and Lou comes over to me. Lou Pinelli walks over to me. He says, Kip, he goes, it's starting to rain out here a little bit. I want you to go out there and slip a couple times on the mound while you're warming up so we can get the hell out of here. It's going through one ear and right out the other, right? So I walk out there to the mound, and it's not wet at all. It wasn't wet. There's no chance I could even slip. And so I throw like 3 pitches. And next thing you know, the umpire looks over to the dugout, and Lou comes walking out. He's adjusted his hat, how he always adjusts his hat on the back, and he gets up to him, and they both look up in the sky. And they turn around and said, "Game's called."
Shit.
And George is over there on the on-deck circle, with his bats twirling around, getting ready to go. And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me! This is just going to be my career right here."
Did you at least get to go like meet him?
No, I wouldn't. I would never done that back then. No.
Damn.
He was now the enemy of that game.
Yeah.
He was. I was going to try to get his ass out somehow. That's all. But it was. I was at the game. I was at the game when he hit the triple. I think he was 4 for 4 in Kansas City. I was at the game when he hit it off the left field wall to go over 400. I was at that game.
Wow.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I can't even tell you how big of a George Brett fan I was. I can't even tell you. It was. That's all I did was George Brett this, George Brett that as growing up as a kid.
Did you ever get to meet him later on in your career?
Never did. Wow. Never did.
That's crazy, man.
American League, National League, we never did that. And then by the time I was with Boston, we opened up in Kansas City, but he wasn't there anymore.
Well, then let me ask you this, because now that you bring that up, you're actually the first dude I've ever talked to that was around whenever they started interleague play. And so that you brought up, National League, American League. So when you played, obviously they still identified as like National League or American League. Or did you ever get to play in an interleague game for one?
Did I ever get a what?
To play in an interleague game whenever they started that?
No, I never played in that interleague.
So what do you think of that? Because honestly, it's been there my whole life. It's been interleague, but I kind of wish it was the old style American.
I don't like interleague, especially the way they do it now. You start off the year in interleague. It's like you should be playing in your division to start the season. You should be playing in your division when you finish the season, just like football does. 2 years ago, this is no shit. 2 years ago, the Angels, what they call them now, Los Angeles Angels, they went 38 games to start the season without playing one team in their division. 38 games. I mean, what's that about?
Yeah, no. Last season it took the Rangers quite a while to play a team within their division as well. I'm surprised we got to it earlier.
It just doesn't make sense. It's not fair the way they run baseball. It hadn't been fair ever since they did it because this team plays that team in that division. It's all over the place, so they're not all playing the same teams, and it's never been the way it should be fair.
Yeah. Well, Kip, first of all, man, I'd love to have you back. You've been one of my favorite guests. You're cool to talk to. You're just a cool dude. But second of all, I know you brought up your podcast, and I was trying to look for that earlier today. What can you find it on?
I'll have to get it to you. The guy who runs it for me, he does everything, so I'll have to get it for you.
Please
but
do,
I will.
Because I'm interested in listening to it more.
Okay, cool. That'd be great.